Hi, I'm Robert Simmons, and I'm here to talk to you today about Satyaloka Clear Azeztulites, and I'll also say a little about Azeztulites in general. Now, the reason for this video is a little unusual because I'm making it because I want to ask your help in creating a vision for the world during this time of crisis. And not only a vision for the world, but also an actual energetic activation in the world, I guess I'd say, of bringing the light to earth and enhancing the amount of light, spiritual light, that is here. So the reason Satyaloka Azeztulites figure into this vision of mine that I'm inviting you to share and participate in is because of all the stones that I know, Satyaloka Clear Azeztulites probably carry or evoke within us the most, or the greatest infusion of spiritual light, I guess I would say. And so I'll back up a little bit here in just a moment and talk about the stones themselves. But I want to say this first. The vision I have involves me giving away through my company, Heaven and Earth, up to 100,000 pieces of Satyaloka Clear Azeztulite. And the stones themselves are free. And what I'm asking people who request them to do is to create a little ritual and offer them for the good of the world, for the earth, and for, of course, humanity as well, since we're inseparable. So that's kind of the preview of what this is. You know, I'm ready to give the stones to all of you, and I hope that enough of you who see this video will be willing to ritually give the stones to the waters and the earth of our planet. So what is Azeztulite? I'll say this quickly because I've addressed it in a number of my other videos. Azeztulite, there are about 20 varieties of Azeztulite that have been discovered up to now. In terms of their chemistry, the basis of all the Azeztulites is quartz. They're quartz chemically, at least in most of their makeup. Some of the Azeztulites have other minerals mixed in, but the substantive base is quartz. What makes them different from other quartz is that they're more highly activated, or they're activated in a different way than any of the other minerals that I know, and certainly any other kind of quartz that I know. And if I take it from the channelings about this and from my own experience, all the Azeztulites carry the energy of the great central sun, which is the spiritual sun, not the physical sun in our sky, although that represents it. But it's the spiritual sun that is holographically present in all of the matter in the world. So every atom has at its core, and our own heart has at its core a manifestation of the great central sun. And that's why it's central. And this is something that's been known esoterically for thousands of years. So I won't go into that any further, except to say that the Azeztulites themselves came in a very synchronistic way to me. They were predicted before they came by Naisha Asian, who was the co-author of the Book of Stones with me and was a friend and someone I knew who was very well attuned to stone energies before we wrote the book together. But in any case, it was her initial inner contact with the beings of Azeztulite, who call themselves the Azez, that predicted the arrival of Azeztulite, which did indeed happen. They also predicted its discovery over a number of different places on the earth, and over the 20 some years has it been, it is 30 years now since the first piece came to us. In that period of time, 20 different varieties have been found after the original initial one. Now, so when I hold a piece of azeztulite, I have one here. This is New Zealand azeztulite. I call it Sarlite azeztulite, after the Hindu word Sara, which means the great central sun. And when I hold a piece of this over my heart, a great wave of peace is the first thing I feel. Gentleness, love, and then there's an emanation of light that I can see inwardly surrounding and going through my heart. And then if I keep meditating with it, it will go up and down through my chakras and eventually fill the whole interior space of a person with spiritual light. That's the light of the Azez. And all the Azeztulites carry it. So Satyaloka Clear Azeztulite is the second type of Azeztulite that was ever discovered. The first came from North Carolina, and then what I think of as the very same kind was also Azeztulite was also found in Vermont a couple years later. But the first new type or different type of Azeztulite that was found after the initial pieces is a type found in India, which we call Satyaloka Azeztulite. And I later named it Satyaloka Clear Azeztulite to distinguish it from two other types that were found later, a yellow variety and a pink variety. So the Satyaloka Clear Azeztulite, and some of it was not transparent, some of it was white, was found initially in southern India, and that's where it gets its name. The story of how that came to me is that I was at the Tucson Gem and Mineral Show one year, and I was offering my stones for sale, and we had the original Azeztulites there, and this is quite a few years back, so they were a new thing, and they were very popular with energy-sensitive people who came to our booth. So during the course of that show, which was a 2-week event, someone came into my booth who had just arrived from India, and she told me quite a story. Basically what she told me is that she had been sent to the Tucson Gem Show by monks from a monastery in South India, which was called the Satyaloka Monastery. And Satyaloka means the place of truth. That's what it means in Hindi. And so that monastery was named that, and what she told me was that the monks there are all enlightened, and that they live high in the mountains, in a remote area, and they're very connected to the land there because the land emanates the light that illuminates their consciousness. And they had found that the stones, the particular quartz stones that are in their area, carry that light energy. So it was a sort of a project or an outreach from the monks of the Satyaloka Monastery initially to send into the world some of the stones from their mountain in order to spread the light. And they had given kind of a suitcase full of these stones to this American woman who showed up at our booth in Tucson. She was there at their monastery as a meditator and a devotee, and she got the sort of mission because she was planning to come back to America. She got the mission from the monks to bring some of their stones to America and find someone who would distribute them and thereby spread the light that their stones embodied. So I think because Heaven and Earth was well known as a company that really specialized in the highest vibration stones, or maybe it was simply intuition, but she visited our showroom, and while she was there speaking to me, she kind of went through a process where she was checking in, and she finally said, yeah, I need to tell you this story because I've brought these stones to America, and I think you're the ones to distribute them. So she told me about the monastery and about the light, and she let me hold one of the stones. And as I held it, I immediately recognized it as a form of Azeztulite. And it was very exciting to me because, as I say, it was the first new type of Azeztulite I had encountered. Even though it had been foretold, I hadn't found any of the new ones yet. So, in honor and in recognition of the place from which the stones came, we called them Satyaloka Azeztulite. And I like also that it means the stones of the nameless light from the place of truth. And, they do strongly activate the crown chakra, and they bring light energy down through the crown chakra, through the whole chakra system, and into the earth through our feet. That's my felt experience of what they do. So I'll show you 3 little pieces of them. I'll bring them up here to the lens. You can see those. They're quite pretty. When they're polished, they can the perfect ones can be made into beautiful gems. And we do through the Heaven and Earth website and catalog. We have a lot of bigger pieces and gems and jewelry and so forth made from Satyaloka Azeztulite and from all forms of Azeztulite. So my commercial right now is to say, if you want to see all that after you've seen the video, go see heavenandearthjewelry.com. Just spell that all out in small letters and that'll get you there. Now, the 3 stones I've showed you are representative of what I intend to give away. And now I think I'll tell you about this vision. This was something unexpected that happened. I was meditating maybe about 2 years ago now, and somehow I was kind of taken to see the Earth from space, you might say. I had a vision of the Earth from space, or at least, an imaginal representation of that. And what I could see is what, in a way, we all are familiar with now, which is the Earth, I guess you would say, congested and covered in dark energy, in dark clouds of energy. It looked like clouds in my vision, but I understood it was energy, and it was kind of choking off and killing the Earth and the inhabitants of the Earth in my vision. And it was very distressing to see. And of course, I thought of climate change and all of the things that go with that, and war, and many of the things we see have been seeing around us for my whole lifetime, and I'm sure just about everybody who's watching this. And I was, it hurt to look at that. And as I continued meditating and looking down at the planet, I could see a kind of a little point of light. And as I scrutinized that, I could see that occurred, or it was showing up in my vision in South India. And that's not a place I think about very much, but that's where it showed up in my vision. So I kept looking, and as I was looking, I saw that from that center of light, there were little plumes like threads of light that went out to other parts of the world. And then it started with just a few, and then there were more and more and more, and they were going everywhere around the globe. And I then saw that these points began, when there were a kind of a larger number of them, they started connecting with one another too. So these threads of light became a net. And there was a dissolving of all of the dark clouds of negative energy around the earth in the vision. And this net of light became stronger and more brilliant until the entire planet seemed to radiate light. It did radiate light in my vision. So, somewhere in that watching of this unfolding with my inner sight, I realized, or I had the insight, that the points of light were symbolic of the stone that came from South India, the Satyaloka Clear Azeztulite. And I suddenly knew, this is 2 years ago, oh, I have to, my job, my mission, which I will accept, is to send out a lot of these stones around the world to be planted in the earth and in the waters of the planet to cleanse and bring light to them. And this is to be done by people. That's the only way, all over the world, who are willing to participate in this. And in order to make it happen, or to make it easier for it to happen, my piece of the puzzle was to give the stones away for free. And, you know, as it happened, I had many, many stones like this of the Satyaloka Azeztulite that I had purchased a number of years ago. They're not even available anymore for me to buy, but I had purchased a whole lot of them at the time, a couple of tons actually, from the first person I found who got permission and went to the source and gathered many of them, because always I wanted to distribute them around the world, but until 2 years ago when this vision came, I was always selling them. And perhaps because the crisis of the earth is intensifying, it's now appropriate for me to give them away. And I'm happy to do it. I've been supported, I've been supported in my work, and I've been supported in my business by all the people around the world who love stones. And I'm happy to share these with all of you who want to participate in this. So the idea is you get in touch with heaven and earth, tell them you want a set of the free stones. There's 3 that come in each set. Pay the postage, that's all. And we'll send them to you, and then you can enact the ritual of bringing the light to the earth and to the waters. So I showed you 3 stones. This is the little packet they come in. Can you see that? It's kind of glary. There you can see maybe. And the piece of paper that comes with this shows the radiant earth as we represented it as an image, as the outcome of this effort. And also there's a little printout of the suggestion of the ritual of dedicating one of the 3 stones to the earth and burying it in a place that you feel is the appropriate place. The second stone is to be, again, chosen. You choose a place to put it in the water, a stream or a lake or the ocean, or whatever body of water speaks to you. And when you do that, you do a ritual asking that the water be purified and filled with light. Just as with the earth, when you bury, you ask that the earth in this place be purified and filled with light and healed, and the waters be healed. And you ask that these stones connect with all the other stones that are being planted everywhere around the earth, for the good of the whole. The third stone is for you to keep for yourself and meditate with it. And to as much as you wish and as much as you're willing, you can reenact each time you meditate with the stones your intention for the healing and purification and filling with light of the earth and the water. And I invite you to do that meditation with the third stone that's for you, and envision the places where you planted the stone in the earth and threw the stone in the water, and think about those places and envision this greater and greater intensification of a kind of infusion of spiritual light to the earth and to the waters, for the purposes of the good of the whole. And you'll find your own body gets connected with the earth and with the water, and it also fills you with the same light that you're calling in for the earth. So if you want to feel the kind of energy that Satyaloka Clear Azeztulite offers, you can place it up here on the top of your head, and you can feel that light energy come down through you. I do so quickly right now. You can also bring it to your heart and invite that light into your heart. If you have other pieces of this or other Azeztulites, you can place them in both places, or here and your heart, or along your whole chakra system, and so forth, whatever your imagination brings to you to do. Let your inner, the little surprising thoughts and ideas and impulses that come to you guide you, because those are things that come from your deeper self, and it's where the wisdom is in us. So that's kind of the project. And I started this through Heaven and Earth about 2 years ago, saying we would give away 10,000 stones. And we did that rather quickly, within the first year. And then I thought, we've got to do more. So I said, we'll do another 10,000 stones. And we've now given away 20,000 stones. And I'll tell you something that moved me recently that then also brought me the impulse to say, okay, let's fully commit and give away 100,000 stones. So here's the story of that. I think it's not really a stretch for anybody who watches this to realize that on a worldwide scale, we're in a big time of crisis and rapid change. We hope for the positive transformation of human consciousness and of the earth. And those of us who are aware and choosing to align our intention with these kinds of goals are doing what we can in the inner and outer aspects of our life to facilitate and bring this about. And certainly a ritual like the one I've described is carrying that intention. So I'll mention, a couple of the aspects of the crisis of this time. It's right now the beginning of June of 2020. The COVID-19 virus is all over the earth. Nobody quite knows at the moment whether most of the countries are starting to get to the place where the curve of the virus's spread is going to peak, or not, or whether the coming it back out of isolation will bring people into contact and make the virus spread more and resurge. We don't know yet, but the virus has triggered a very big set of crises in the world. There's the health crisis, there's the depression and fear and anxiety that goes with that. There's the financial crises and meltdowns, and those are kind of unfolding in ways that nobody knows for sure how they'll unfold and when they'll stop or where or how far it will go. And, there's a lot of unknowns we're living with. We're living in a kind of time of radical uncertainty. And that's very much a habitual trigger of fear in us. And one of the things that those of us who want to bring light to the earth in a time of crisis are well advised to be vigilant about is noticing the fear but not identifying with it. When we identify with any of these kinds of things, either fear or blame or projection of evil on others or any sort of things that isolate us in our minds from loving, compassionate engagement with all beings, whenever we leave that, we've thwarted our own intention in a way. We can always come back, and that's what I have to do. But being vigilant is important, especially now. Now, I want to say that the time of crisis is also a time of opportunity for transformative change. And as I watch it and go through my own version of what's going on collectively, I feel that the dissolving of the patterns of the normal, of what we call normality or normal life, is a double-edged sword. If a person is really personally suffering from illness or financial pressures or stresses or, a lot of other things that this has brought about, the immediacy of those difficulties makes it pretty hard to see the crisis as an opportunity. So I don't want to ignore any of that. At the same time, I know in my own life that the times of greatest difficulty and the breaking down of my own, what I thought of as normal patterns in my life, have at several times been set the stage for the spiritual awakenings that have helped me become who I am. And who I am is not anybody special in the sense of being more enlightened than someone else or something like that. It's just I've grown through those difficulties, and I think we always have that opportunity. There's a man named Paul Levy who I'm going to mention now in this point in the video, who is talking about the big picture of the COVID-19 crisis and of its underlying connection to the inner side of things. He's been a proponent. His name is Paul Levy, Levy. He has a website called awakeninthedream.com, and he's got a number of very good essays and videos about what I'm about to talk about. He's been saying for some time that the human race, the species, is collectively suffering from what he calls a mind virus. And he takes as evidence that the fact that collectively we're engaged in what he calls suicidal behavior, meaning the destruction of the ecological environment, the ability of the earth to support us, is an undeniable thing that's happening. And many of us who are awake to that and take it seriously are doing as much activism as we can to change the situation for the better. And how it's going to go, we don't know, but it's undeniable that collectively the behavior that is leading in this self-destructive path is in an individual. If someone did that, we would say they had a mental problem, like kind of like a drug addict might have, who's doing self-destructive cycles again and again and knows full well that it will eventually kill him, but still doesn't stop or can't stop. He says it's like that collectively. And he says it's being fueled by this so-called mind virus. He gives it the name Wetiko, which is a Cree Indian name for a demonic spirit of evil and destruction. Now, this is all scary sounding stuff, and I don't want to generate fear here. All I'm really saying is those dark clouds that I saw in my vision are a representation in the imaginal of the kind of energy that Levy describes as Wetiko. And the fact that it was pervasive around the planet is very much the same sort of thing he talks about in terms of the psychology of what's going on in the world. Now, he says that destructive energy in human beings manifests characteristically in the feeling of being separate and isolated from others. We lose our feeling of connection with others. We lose our awareness of the earth as a living, ensouled being. And in our anxiety and which is produced by the feeling of isolation, we project onto others the pathology that exists within ourselves. And you can see this very easily in the collective when a nation views other nations as the bad guys, or when groups view other groups as the evil ones, and use these things as an excuse to perpetrate violence and aggression on whoever they're projecting on. It's a very common thing, and I don't have to dwell on it for you to understand it. In a nutshell, this mind virus that he says causes us to forget our connectedness, lose our empathy, and tend to view others as either threats to be afraid of or prey to be taken advantage of. It's not a pretty picture, and it's not everything about human beings, not at all, but it is the thing that he points out and says underlies the chaotic situations that are kind of being generated around the world right now. He also says something interesting to me, which is that the coronavirus, he views it as a physical manifestation of this inner condition of soul sickness in the collective of humanity. Because he's been calling this thing a mind virus for 20 years, and now we have a physical virus that has many of the resonant likenesses to the mind virus. The mind virus hides in our blind spots, Levy says. And by that he means that where we don't see ourselves and our own actions clearly because we're asleep to them, and we're asleep to them because we've been afflicted with this mind virus, then where we're blind, that's where we project on someone else. Where we don't know ourselves and what we're really doing, we imagine that the other is doing all the things that are causing our distress or causing the distress of the world. And it is true in a sense that the other people are doing this. It's not only oneself, but the cure for the virus is self-awareness. The cure for the mind virus is self-awareness and empathy. Now, the COVID virus is invisible. It hides in our blind spots in the sense that, you don't see it in the air, you don't see it on your hands, you don't see it on objects, and so forth. And I've even seen a video that mentions that in the case of this virus, it may even have the ability to make itself invisible to our immune system by secreting a protein that keeps our T cells from being aware of it. And wouldn't that really be like this mind virus that Paul Levy talks about? So that's maybe enough for me to say about that right at the moment, because what I'm really doing is trying to paint the picture of here we are in global dissolution of many patterns due to high stressing events, such as the physical health crisis and the financial crisis that goes hand in hand with it, and the ecological crisis that's building in the background and is coming to a head. So, as an alchemist, my new book, The Alchemy of Stones, that comes out in September, talks about this. As an alchemist, I view the intensification of crisis energy and the tension that builds with that as indicative of radical change coming really soon. And the more it builds, the more radical, and the more radical the change may be, and the sooner it can come. You can't tell from the negative appearance of the tensions building that the outcome of this will be negative. In my personal crises through my life, the tensions that built up right before breakthroughs always felt stressful, frightening, difficult, sometimes even angering. And the realization that suddenly dawned at the peak of these crises was always the thing that took me to a wider perspective, in which place I remembered my connection with the divine. I was filled with love for myself and others and for the divine, and I knew the answers to whatever I wanted to know. These things that's what the Gnostics called gnosis, knowing, and they meant it as an experience of real knowledge. So that may be where our crisis can go. I believe it is. And because so much destruction, violence, difficulty, projection upon others, and loss of compassion and empathy is happening, in order, I believe, to put some energy into the other side, into the other polarity, it's important to do this ritual calling in of the light into human beings and into the earth and into the water of our planet. Because I feel that this is the first, well, it is like the global pandemic of coronavirus and the global financial stresses that go with it and the global disruption of what we've called normal life sets the stage for global change. And although we don't know what will happen, we can put our intention and our imagination and our attention into ritualizing and thereby co-creating the possibility for enlightenment out of this difficult time. And I believe it can really happen. I really do. We have a great deal of power in our three human powers of attention, intention, and imagination. And we don't even realize how much power we carry because the worldview that we've been educated to have, that's based in materialism, says we don't have any power except the power we exert as force in the material world. And we have much deeper power than that. And it isn't power over others, it's power of creation. So, I want to invite you to join me in using your powers and your ability to co-create to help manifest the emergence of the Earth as a planet of light. Is that a big enough project? I think so. I tried to think of what's the biggest actually, it just came as a vision, and I said yes. So now I've talked about that. I want to talk to you a little bit about a couple of movies I saw recently, because these all figure in together. I used Paul Levy's work to describe this crisis and to say that and I haven't done an adequate job of summarizing his work. You really should check it out. But to say that through imagination and intention and attention and ritual action in co-creative partnership with the spiritual help that we have available to us and with the soul of the world, that kind of that can exert an influence on what's happening and what unfolds from here. Now, there's an example of this in the story of the Kogi people, K-O-G-I. The Kogi people are subject of two documentaries. The first one is called Heart of the World, and the second one is called Aluna, A-L-U-N-A. Both of these are on YouTube. You can find them easily. They're really worth watching. I just watched them both last week, and they really fit into the weave of what I've been telling you about here and what the evolution of my own understanding is right now. So the Kogi people they're indigenous people from South America. They're in Colombia. They live on a mountain quite high up and very remote from civilization, even though they are probably only 25 or 30 miles from a city. They have no contact with it. They don't have the wheel. They don't have electronic devices. They don't want any of those things. They weave their own cloth. They spin their own thread. They make their own clothing. And they view themselves as the caretakers of the whole world from where they are on their mountain, which they call the heart of the world. And they lived without any contact with so-called civilization for, thousands of years. They weren't unaware of civilization. They just didn't want anything to do with it. But they, in their own meditative perceptions, understood that the earth is in danger of dying. That's how they see it. And they felt like they had to come down and talk with the people that they call the younger brothers, what we might call modern people, the people of so-called civilization. So they came down and were telling their stories, saying that they are the elder brothers and that the rest of us are the younger brothers, and that the younger brothers have lost their way and are destroying the earth and will kill the earth and everything on it if they don't change their way of doing and being. And they came to teach us about that and awaken us to that. And certainly in our minds, we know that anyway. We know what we're doing collectively. You individually, I don't think any of us intend that, but I think that we feel in some ways helpless to undo or change that. And the Kogi people kind of show a way that we aren't helpless. It's the same way I've been talking about. So in the heart of the world, their whole story is told about who they are and what their vision is, and there's a lot that validates that there's truth in the fact that they are caring for the whole world. They say that there are energy lines that emanate from the mountain where they live that are part of a network or a web that goes everywhere on the planet, and that through taking care of the energy lines on their mountain and keeping them unbroken or repairing them when they break, they support the life of their mountain and on their mountain and also of the whole earth. But they say that the younger brothers have been doing so much violence to the earth that with their industrial civilization that they fear that they can't do enough from where they are to keep the earth from dying. So it's a severe and intense story. The people themselves, when you watch the movies, are utterly beautiful, and their energy fills you with a sense of their connectedness to the earth and their groundedness and the kind of the inner truth of what they have to say. You know, they don't have all the outer world details, but in terms of the patterns of what's happening, I think they really do. The man who made the first documentary came back, I think it was 23 years later. Was it 23? No, 13 years later, maybe 11, and made another documentary. That's the second one, called Aluna. And Aluna is their name for the great mother goddess, who they view as the source of all being, all life, all consciousness, the one who imagined human beings and brought them into existence. Very much like the being I would call Sophia, the divine feminine wisdom principle that the alchemists loved and co-created with. So the Kogis were shown in these documentaries as being able to maintain the water and the land in good, balanced ecological harmony on their whole mountain, which goes from sea level all the way up to like 20,000 feet, all these different subsystems of ecological niches. When they are allowed to do the work they do ritually and the work they do physically and the way they cultivate their crops and things like that, everything thrives. Where their way of life was broken or where their energy lines were disrupted, things deteriorated, and you see it all in the films. Now, an amazing thing that happens in the second film is they get, with the help of the filmmaker, they get a 400-kilometer long golden thread made for them, and they walk the perimeter of their entire area, unwinding this thread in order to reconnect the lines and to revivify their mountain and to send that new life force energy out to the earth. This is very, very much like what I'm talking about with the ritual implanting of the Satyaloka Clear Azeztulites all over the world. And it's not that it is the same. I'm not in touch with the Kogi, so I don't have a way of trying to do the same project they're doing, but it's the same in spirit. It's the same in intention. And I feel as though synchronistically, if we carry that intention, those of us who participate in this will do the right actions and will find the right places and, will be guided. So we have to, the thing to do if we go down this path is to trust it and to do it with full intention, full-hearted devotion and commitment and love for the earth. And that is one thing you see in the Kogi people in these films. Another interesting thing is that they do not wear shoes because they don't want to break their connection with the earth. And since I saw that movie, I've been going barefoot a lot more. So, as I said, we're at times of heightening intensification of all these different crisis energies, you might say. And, I'll remind us that the word for crisis also means opportunity in the Chinese language. In alchemy, the spiritual alchemy, the intense moments, are the times when things can change. So I wouldn't say we welcome the stresses of this time, but I would say it focuses our attention on the importance of these times, the significance of them. And if we want to play a conscious and generative role in these times, then one way we can do that, a very important way, is to focus our powers of attention, intention, and imagination, and make rituals in which we offer the focused intention and imagine the fruition of it for the good of the earth and the good of all beings here. My heart tells me there's a great deal of hope in this seemingly dark time. The vision I showed, I told you about, of the darkness and then the points of light and then the net of light and then the radiant earth being the final manifestation of it, is the vision I hold in my full committed intention. And so, one other thing I must tell you about the Kogi. They say that the breaking of the lines, the energy lines, is killing the earth. When we do our implantation of these stones, we should envision lines of connection going everywhere from the places that we plant these stones, filaments of golden white light, and also from our own hearts when we meditate with the stones, going to the places we planted them, as well as everywhere else to the places where everyone else has planted them, and to every other point on the earth that's a part of the earth's living energy net. So there's that. Another thing just about the Kogi that's interesting, in their maintenance of their mountain, I forgot to mention that they plant stones or pieces of shell or other ritual offerings, and they'll take things from the top of the mountain and offer them at the bottom at the sea. And they'll take things from the seashore like shells and they'll bring them up to the top of the mountain and offer them there. And you can see that if the mountain is meant to have energetic lines of connection running all through it, that taking objects from each extreme end of the mountain, from the sea level to the top, and bringing them to the opposite end creates a ritual circulation of energy. And the films showed that not only is the circulation of energy a ritual in the minds of the Kogi, but also it manifests. So Paul Levy has said that our collective mental disease has manifested physically as the COVID-19 virus. The Kogi have shown that their collective mental health and their ritual intention for the good of the earth is manifest where they live in the harmony of their environment that they've maintained for thousands of years and still maintain even in the face of a lot of incursions by industry and construction and a lot of destruction of what the Kogis have viewed as their land. Still, they practice it, and where they're allowed to practice it, things have regenerated. So, consciousness is at the core of all of this. If we're unconscious of what we're doing, if we're blind to the destruction, we don't stop. And if we're awake to our wisdom and we practice our intention in a conscious way, and we do what the Kogis say. They say when they plant a stone from the top of the mountain at the sea, they're making a payment, quote unquote, at the bottom. And when they bring a shell up to the top of the mountain and leave it there ritually, they say they're making a payment there. And so the payment is simply making the connection. So I love the it's charming to me that they call it that. But it's important to think of this example, I believe, because it works. And if you take this seriously and decide, check in with your own heart and see if you're moved to participate in this. If you feel that and respond to it, then continue to hold your intention and believe, like commit yourself to the reality of the effectiveness of the ritual that you do. One for the water, one for the land, one for yourself. If you find that you're interested now, I'll say at the end, that's really what I wanted to share with you. I have a lot of passion for this vision, and I know that some of you at least will join, and I'm grateful to you for doing that. Really grateful. I have the stones and I'm happy to give them, but I can't do what you can do. So together we can co-create it. And remember to call in the soul of the world and all your helpers in spirit and the light from beyond, the great central sun. And call all of that in when you do your ritual, all right? And we'll make magic together. The world is made out of magic. Materialism, which says there is no magic, is itself a magic spell that makes us believe that we don't have the power we have. That's what I think. So, if you are interested in more about the other kinds of Azeztulite, go to my website, heavenandearthjewelry.com, and start searching for different kinds of Azeztulite and see what talks to you. Right on the home page there will be a connection to this video. That's probably how you'll have found it. There'll be information about how to request the free Satyaloka Azeztulites, these ones, for your ritual. We're charging $5 postage. That pays for the postage and the envelope the padded envelope we put it in. For the United States, it's a bit more outside the United States, but our website will tell you how much it is. You can order as many of these as you want. Just pay the postage for each one. I invite you to tell other people about it. I really hope that enough people will respond to this that we can meet our goal of 100,000 stones being placed in the waters, in the earth, and with the people of our world. So I offer my thanks, I offer my blessings, I offer my apologies for being so long-winded, but you know how it is. I didn't have, I apologize that this video was so long. I just didn't have time to make a short one. So again, my thanks, my blessings, and let's participate in the transformation available to us in these times. May it be so. Many blessings. Thank you.